with the Lesson Learned podcast. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Let me just screen for a little bit because it's so we have our full faces. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the program. Um, Apologies for being late, but apparently Zoom has been zooming and being a bit of a dunce. So, how's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing okay. I'll do a content warning early on. We're going to be talking about later on in the show about sexual assault and sexual allegations. So if you feel that that is not up your bailiwick, you don't want to discuss it, you don't want to hear it, that's perfectly fine. We'll give out the warning again when we really get into it in detail. So we're going to be discussing that. We're going to be discussing essentially the Me Too movement as it sort of a new wave has hit um, the video game industry. But before that, of course, we're going to start with something a little better, or should we say a little lighter? The news. So let's start with one. We again not so weird these days. It should be weird, but it isn't weird, and that is the fact that it seems that finally, let me see. Are we really? Yeah, we're live. We are live.
We're live.
Okay, it's just that my secondary screen wasn't showing anything for some reason. So we're live. And Fortnite is finally out of early access. Hooray for Fortnite! Yes, a multi-billion-dollar game franchise. No, not franchise, just simple game is actually out of early access. Nearly 3 years after the launch of Fortnite, Save the World, the original survival defense game barely anyone played, and not the battle royale afterthought that became that worldwide essential. Epic Games is ripping off the early access band-aid and declaring Save the World a real premium game. Battle Royale creative are losing their early access labels as well. Their title games are growing up. So I didn't know that Save the World was one game and then it morphed into a battle royale. Uh, so that's a thing.
I didn't even know it was like in early access.
Yeah. When that is stating there, it also is early access, I guess, on Steam. So, or in well, no, Fortnite came before
Yeah, the Epic Store.
Epic Store, but they had their own launch website, so I guess that kind of makes sense. I think I'm not really sure. That's confusing.
Yeah.
But at least for people who want to celebrate, there it is. You can celebrate. Fortnite is out of early access, and Epic Games has millions of dollars in the bank to show for it. We talked about this about several months ago, even last year. So here's an update. Nintendo president apologized for Joy-Con trouble by Brian Ashcraft, and this is also Kotaku. In a recent financial Q&A, Nintendo finally apologized for issues caused by Joy-Cons, but will not comment further due to the current class action lawsuit. Oof. Players have been dealing with the so-called Joy-Con drift, as Kotaku previously reported, stating how it become a real problem. Last year, a class action lawsuit was filed with Nintendo accused of not disclosing defective I think again, I'm seeing things in my own screen that don't match what should be going on in with. Okay, sorry about that. It's weird. Today everything's weird, and the topic we're going to be talking about is weird. So I apologize for that. So we're back on Joy Cons. Um, Regarding the Joy-Con, we apologize for trouble caused to our customers, said President, with Kotaku quotes President Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa. We continue to aim to improve our products, but as the Joy-Con is a subject of a class action lawsuit in the United States and is still a pending issue, we would like it to refrain from responding about any specific actions, which makes perfect sense. Well, not that it came out to a law to a class action suit. It's just that, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't understand what happened with those Joy-Cons. It's just like I don't know if they rushed it or if like why they came out in the state they were, but yeah, I'm hoping they have that fixed now with all their newer Joy Cons.
They probably do a red. Well, I'm moving articles around because there's so many articles that are about what we're going to be talking about that I don't want to jump into them too early. So yeah, I think it's probably something that about rushing it or maybe having a defect at the factory, right? Um,
Hmm.
these things people don't know how they are. They just you program into the computer. Computer goes to the production line, and then both the robots and the people in the production line follow the instructions. So if there's any defects on the basic things or a material defect or whatever, it could lead to all kinds of problems. We might see, I don't know, maybe they're gonna settle with the lawsuit if they're found to be being guilty of breach of contract, whatever, and they'll have to substitute a lot of Joy Cons and issue an apology and whatnot. I don't think it's going to come down to, and I think certainly Nintendo will want to avoid having to give out a cash prize of any sort, right? They don't want a settlement because that actually looks more guilty than repairing whatever damage it might be. Uh,
Yeah,
although although probably cheaper. Is weird how these things work. Talk about cheap things or cheaper things. This one was Ethan Gatch Wednesday as last week. Former Sony executive calls for shorter games that are cheaper to make. And when this did hit, this piece of news hit Twitter, it really sent out a lot of
ripples.
emotions among the gaming crowd, which I don't understand, to be honest. I mean, I think a lot of people are just married to the idea. It was one of those things that people are just married to, and the idea of value based on how long can you play a game, right? Which feeds into the whole MMO and live service thing because a game that can be technically played forever has the most value, I guess. Hmm?
I I mean, I guess it goes back to that whole live service, but I guess I guess that is the idea. If average person shopping for a video game, um, $60, that might be a lot, especially depending on how much of a budget they're living on. They look at the box like, well, I don't know, this game is like 80 hours long. It's like, well, I guess that is going to be worth more, worth my money, my $60 versus maybe this other game that might be more like, say, like I guess refined. It might not tout as long as a campaign, and let's just call it like single player games.
Mm-hmm.
It might not uh, the campaign might not be as long, but mostly because it's more refined. The gameplay's more refined. It's much more fun. The story's been edited versus the 80-hour game, which might just have a lot of padding to it. And actually, I kind of find this interesting. If you've did you ever play any of, like, the old Final Fantasy games? I'm more particularly, like, the only ones I'm really familiar with are the original, PlayStation ones.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever played any of those?
Outside of seven, because I never owned a PlayStation, and I played
Yeah,
seven because
so
it wasn't PlayStation. Friend of mine had it. I started there, and then I played a version of it, which was in the
this is the
PC
PC
version.
one.
Yeah.
So, something really interesting is happening with their newer, remasters, and that's that they're including the, um like, the cheats, and by cheats, they mean, being able to speed the game up 3 times, as fast. There's also usually turning off the encounters, the random encounters, and turning off or, activating like, somewhat invincibility mode, but you could still get, like, one hit killed. You can also be affected by death, like instant kill moves and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it also lets you use like your limit breaks and your overdrives or whatever they're called in whichever version of the game you're playing immediately. Um, I've so far I've replayed what 7 through 9 of the versions of all of those, and it is amazing how much padding there are in those games. Just padding, stuff that goes nowhere. Uh, a lot of, like, the random encounters is just that makes up the bulk of the game, and, depending on the gameplay loop or because each Final Fantasy has its own different mechanics, some of it could be more fun over others, but then even when that loop is fun, if you start kinda hitting all those random encounters, especially when you're trying to do something, it does get frustrating, and you kinda realize there's all this padding, all these, the story seems to kinda diverge into directions it doesn't really need to, and, random stuff just kinda keeps happening that doesn't seem to really need it,
Hmm.
per se, and it you I playing these has just made me realize what a time waste a lot of these, games were, especially like Final Fantasy. It's just the fact that I can speed this game up, turn off all those encounters, not having to encounter them, all of that like saves so much time and just helps get through the game quicker and meet that experience. It makes you realize like how much of that stuff isn't needed
Hmm.
to make the game fun, especially if the story can stand on its own feet. With that being said, the last game I played was Final Fantasy VIII, and I didn't particularly like Final Fantasy VIII when I first played it, and I thought like I give it like, oh, let me revisit it now that I'm older and can probably more comprehend the stories. No, I hated it more
Oops.
as an adult. That game left like a bad taste in my mouth, and but 9 was great to go back through, even 7, which I thought was gonna be kind of repetitive. I'm like, "Oh, no, it was cool to go revisit it," and especially even cooler that I was able to beat the game and go through a bunch of the stuff 3 times the speed.
Mm.
So, at a third of the time invested than I would have had to otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing right now. People might not know Dragon Age Inquisition, and Dragon Age Inquisition feels like a third of the game is just there.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
the only reason why I keep playing is because of the dragon fights, which I want to do them all. So it's like I guess I want to because they're interesting and challenging, whatnot. And there's some other things that I want to do with the characters and the like. But I want to make sure I dot all the i's because later on in other DLC they have mentions, and I want that to happen. But aside of that, it feels like once you do like the two main story missions, you can just go into the ending, and that literally the ending says, okay, this person gonna do that, and you start the path to the ending, which gets pretty linear once you go into it. So it feels like a padding, right? It's like and many we would talk also about the last part of like the last third or so or half of what's his game, Kingdoms of Amalur, which just feels very long. Once you're done with the pretty cool scene with the siege and all that, and I think it's one of the best sort of setups that I've seen ever. And a sort of fantasy, like getting you the idea that you're in this big war and there's these monsters and all. Once you're done with that, it's just essentially a straight. There's a sights thing where it's about getting through a door, but once you get that, you can
Yeah.
literally run all. And I lived done that. I literally run all the way, kill whatever's in the middle, run past everything else, and just go because I don't want to. It's just more of the same dungeons, more of the same enemies. And so yeah, a tighter, more focused game. I think it's and he's basically talking about expensive. We talked about this like 2 weeks ago about how expensive games have gotten, how big, and one of the things is the expenses, right? Uh, it's he's quoting Layden, who is Sean Layden, who's a former chairman of Sony Interactive Entertainment Worldwide Studios. He says, "I will welcome the return to a 12 to 15-hour game." Who departed last night after almost 32 years, the company told Ventura's beat Dean Takahashi in an interview at this year's Game Lab conference. "I will finish more games, first of all. It's like well-edited piece of literature or movie. And, I don't like the comparison, but I know where he's going with that. He's been looking for a discipline on that, the containment around that. He get us a tighter, more compelling content. It will be something I like to see a return to." Aside from personal convenience and having to invest a week's worth of time into beating the latest Sony first-party exclusive big open-world game, Layden thinks developing shorter games will also help studios contain ever-ballooning developing costs, which makes perfect sense, right? Because a lot of the things about these games is that you throw in a lot of stuff, like a lot of mechanics, side stories, and now those side stories have to do. You have to have characters, which have to be voice acted, which have to be increasingly mocap, right? It's more time, people waiting around, writers are writing, people are waiting, you know. And this is very interesting, according to Layden. This is Kotaku quoting him. The cost of creating games has increased. Some studies, we don't know which studies are, we might have to look up to them, where they might be, show that that's gone up, that's the cost, up to 2 times every time a console generation advances. The problem with this model is just it's unsustainable. And he actually quotes some numbers. My AAA games in current generation go anywhere from 80 million to 150 million or more to build. Now that's before marketing, and marketing can double and even triple the cost. So an $80 million game could end up being 160 million, and a $150 million game could be 3 times that. That's 450 million. If you expand it out, so from as low as say 100 million to another that's nearly $500 million. Extended over time, it takes 3 or 4 or 5 years to build a game while you're not getting any return on the investment. You just continue to pay out into looking for the big payoff at the end. Pay into looking into the big payoff at the end. I don't think it's an next generation you can make those numbers and multiply them by 2 and expect the industry to continue to grow. Yeah, just I agree. I certainly agree. Yeah, that's a quote right there.
I think a lot of it too is it comes back to that whole like the perception I guess from customers. It's like, here's my $60. This is all I have to spend for maybe like the next 2 or 3 months on a video game. What kind of like looking for something new? The the 80-hour game versus like the, I don't know, 30-hour game. I think in some ways, like, gamers are sort of at fault for that, for all that padding, just to so people can doubt that little number in the back. I think that is one factor. At the same time, though, it does also have to do a lot with quality and stuff. I kind of think back to the Order 1886, where that game had a rather short campaign. Visually, it's pretty good. Gameplay, it's all right, but I think the biggest thing was that it's supposed to be like this story-driven game, kind of, a character-driven game, and it just was not interesting. And I think it a lot of it has nothing to do with the length of the game. Um, I think it all has to do with, like, how the story was written, how and its execution of it. Because, like, the point where I thought it was getting a little more interesting was at the end, and that's, like, where the game ends, and it's like, "Oh, okay," and it's, like, just when it was barely starting to get good for me, and it's like, "Yeah, we're probably not gonna see a sequel to this game again," even though I don't think I'd wanna see a sequel. I'd be more interested in, oh, what kinda happens afterwards, but a sequel, like a full-fledged sequel is like, no. I think that IP might have, like, too much negativity to it to where we'd ever see a sequel. That and, of course, the studio, I think, got bought out by, Facebook to work more on, like, the Oculus Rift
Yeah.
software for it.
Talking about that, and I think there's news from last week of a Mixer folding into Facebook. I'll talk about this in a short second because I think it's interesting, especially that we are on Twitch. This is from Ars Technica last week. Microsoft is killing its game streaming service, folding it into Facebook's. News comes after months of rumors and a weekend charge of top level racism. A Mixer, the game's streaming platform acquired by Microsoft in 2006, done. Xbox team lead Phil Spencer confirmed the news on Monday, announcing 30-day end of life period before Microsoft formally pulled the plug on July 22nd, so next month. Was more used. Microsoft used the opportunity to offer all users, particularly money-making partner members, a transition path to another streaming service, Facebook Gaming. Beginning today, Facebook will make it easy for anyone in the Mixer community to join if they choose to do so. Spencer writes at Xbox Wire, he guides affected users to check out a Mixer FAQ on the transition, but surprisingly, guidance about jumping from Mixer to Facebook Gaming is full of caveats about eligibility and having financial agreements matched by Facebook as closely as possible. So anybody who was considering jumping to Mixer, you dodge a bullet. Anybody who jumped into Mixer, you swallowed a bullet. Unless you got your money first, in which case, if you're a ninja, you got your money first and away you go, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the people who did write or sign contracts and stuff, they're still getting paid. I guess it really depends on the terms of their contracts, but they got paid. I mean, I feel kind of odd about this because again, it just seems like maybe either Microsoft saw the writing on the wall. It's like, okay, so we're spending millions of dollars or thousands of dollars, however much we're spending to sign um, all these popular personalities to be exclusive to our channel, and it's not drawing in the crowds. So, I mean, part of it, I wonder if it's like, um, I mean, is it the platform? I think it raises the question, like, are these personalities really as popular as they tout? If they couldn't uh, get their audience to adopt a new platform for themselves versus like,
I think it's a combination of things. Different people. I mean, I've known people, myself included, that like to consume certain things in certain platforms and then others. For example, most of the role playing games I see online, I prefer to consume them on YouTube because I can do so in my own time, right? Whether if it's live and I get up and I need to go bathroom or something, I miss something, right? The game has to be very intense for me to be there. But I also noticed difference. I was checking the game I'm running, Rakta's channel. It is more popular on Twitch as a live stream, but then I saw the VODs on YouTube, and there's like no views, no comments whatsoever. So you want to check Rakta's channel and you want to give him a couple of views, and you want to catch up. That's actually on YouTube as well, on Twitch, Iron Claw. By all means, do that. But yeah, it's the way it is. Different, and also people talk about Twitch. It's been around for quite some time, right? It was something else, and then became Twitch and had a huge growth. But it had time to develop itself and grow. Mixer's also been around for a while, but you don't always get results simply by injecting a lot of money.
Yeah, I've never heard a Mixer before, the whole, Ninja, and actually I've never heard of Ninja before until that story, and everyone's making a big deal about this Ninja person that I've never heard of.
So there's that, yeah.
And aren't they, like, jumping so, it's my understanding that is, Microsoft, like, gonna instead sort of, like, outsource their, um streaming stuff to Facebook? Was that
yeah,
like
apparently they reached. Well, probably what's going to be happening is that Facebook bought some of the rights or some of the aspects of this, right? And that's a way of both Facebook, because Facebook has actually quite a bit of gaming on it as well, right?
I've honestly have not heard that about like Facebook having like
It does.
streaming games and
It
stuff
does.
before
Mostly,
this story
mostly
too.
Facebook does a lot of watch parties. Like,
Hmm.
well, I'm doing a television series, I'm watching this, whatever, and they're doing it. So that's a thing. Um, and they want to grow their gaming aspects. So they already have that base, and I've seen some games, but then again, you can also watch YouTube videos on Facebook or get links to Twitch. They're not that exclusive, right? Um, I'm thinking basically that maybe Facebook also invested in Mixer. It was a investor on
Investor, yeah.
it, and so there was a because multiple companies do this. Rarely does a company, even especially in multiple a public traded company, owns another public traded company fully, right? The majority they might earn they might the majority stocks and whatever. So there's many ways that these things can happen. I'm guessing that Facebook already had a hand in Mixer at some level, and that made it much easier. It's like, oh, we're closing. It's like, okay, you know, we don't want to lose the value of our stocks, etc. We already have a service. We'll give you X amount of money. We'll make the transition, etc. And what really it's the software people who thought that Mixer would be their new home and or was their current home, because they're probably some people actually
Yeah.
making money in Mixer, and now they're not because the service is out. And the way it was done, it wasn't phased out. It was like, oh, we're done. You got 30 days. Get the fuck out.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just I'm just thinking like because I know Ninja put out things like I have to do um some reflecting about what I'm going to do next and stuff, and it's I mean one I'm kind of wondering if like this isn't going to be for all of the ones that signed an exclusive thing, but Ninja, you probably got enough money to where you don't ever have to do anything for the rest of your life if as long as you're responsible with whatever money you got.
Yeah.
I think he's at that point, and so I think whatever he does, it's not gonna really matter as long as it's something that he's happy with, uh, but, like, for the others, I'm thinking, like, "Oh my god, they're gonna have to go groveling back to, Twitch," which I'm sure a lot of them aren't gonna be, like, happy
It's
to
gonna be very
do.
hard
It's gonna be
because Twitch is
awkward.
very, very much about their exclusivity. Twitch would allow you to
Yeah.
link to your streams and other platforms, and but particularly between with YouTube and Twitch. If you're on YouTube as a streamer, you can't be on Twitch. If you're Twitch as a streamer, you can't be on YouTube. Same thing
Yeah,
with
if
Mixer.
you're, like,
Yeah,
yeah, you have to be like an affiliate and stuff because I know there's like multi ways you can pay to like
yeah,
multi-stream on on different platforms at the same time. But I assume that's only if you're not like an affiliated or
yeah.
an
No,
affiliate or a
no.
partner
At the
because
moment you sign up with Twitch, even as a beginner, the part of the ULA is you cannot stream somewhere else. You can link to it. You can say you can have a VOD. You can export that because that's the thing. It's like Twitch has VODs, but that's not their main business. Eventually, I
Mhm.
think that if their VODs were to take off, what they have tried to do in multiple ways, but it hasn't, I'm sure that they're gonna release a new statement saying VODs have to be exclusive to Twitch, right? Because everybody wants to create their own,
Yeah.
ecosystem. That word keeps popping up, which is, whatever. So yeah, this stuff is always in flux, and I'm sorry to hear it, everybody at Mixer, because
Honestly,
the
honestly,
content
like
creators, right? I'm talking about them, right?
I mean, this is awful to think because Twitch is owned by hardcore capitalist Amazon, but I'm
Yeah.
just thinking I guess it's awful, but I feel like a sense of Schadenfreude for like people to just feel like Twitch being like, well, 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 look who's come crawling back.
Hmm. Yeah. On
I
different
mean,
news. Yeah, go ahead.
uh,
Sorry, I
yeah, I
interrupted.
think it's just I think I just see that as mostly because it's like you guys, and it's sad because it's like, oh, you guys are trying to take down a giant, and I don't see you guys winning that.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it's like I was right.
And before we start easing into our main topic, and for the last day of Pride Month, really, Persona
Mm,
4 Golden Mod restores Cut Yusuke Romance. This
mm.
is James Davenport over at PC Gamer. The mod restores a scene based on cut voice line discovered years ago in Persona Golden. Uh, Quoting from the article, a long lost romance in Persona 4 Golden making his debut on PC, and all the thanks to a modder. The Yusuke romance mod is still pretty far from release, but it will restore a voice line discovering the original Persona 4 Golden files on Vita into a scene where Yusuke admits his deep affection for the player protagonist. The cutscene is particularly notable due to Persona series' lack of explicitly queer relationships with options any otherwise. Take a look at this video above to see work in progress version of the mod in action. While the voice line triggers correctly, the written line dialogue still doesn't match. Or not, you can give the mod a try to see how it works. Uh, I don't know how long this will persist, You might have. I mean, considering how the people behind Persona are so controlling of their property,
So,
they might slap a cease and desist on this.
oh, so this isn't official. I thought that'd be
No,
neat. Like,
it's a mod for the
hey,
PC version, yeah.
yeah. No,
But
that would have been
apparently
neat if
something
there.
that was in the original game.
Yeah, it's like it's sort of like if you dig around Mass Effect, some of the Mass Effect files, there's like some cut audio from the voice actors having like gay romances, and or just even if it's more so in the first game. The second game there isn't a whole lot, but there are some like recorded some lines done by named Haley something
Hmm.
Fem Shop
Yeah.
that mention that like they're in a relationship with like the female love interest in that. Male, not so much, but
Hmm.
there's a few lines. It's not very much. But this is kind of I find it interesting because I don't know when it comes to Japanese games and their portrayal of just LGBTQ plus. I've heard some bad things about Persona, just the way they've represented some other characters. They're not main characters or anything, or they're just side characters. They
Hmm.
tends not to be very good.
Yeah.
And yeah, I I don't know. It seems like some of them will embrace it. Or well, one or two things. One, they'll ignore it. Two, they'll have these terrible stereotype portrayals of them, and then very few of them will have positive, like, LGBTQ plus representation. And or some of them and I had this is my biggest complaint with, the Digimon, Cyber Sleuth, video games, is that they seem to queer bait really bad.
Mm.
They'll queer bait the hell out of their characters, and then just like, "No, let's just pull it back," or just, not even really explore it very much. It's especially heavy in, like, the second, uh, Lion King 1.5, version of the game, which it it feels like the main character, the character player you're playing, has a best friend that clearly has a thing for him, and they just, like it's to the point where this guy is so obsessive over the player character, and he sort of like the he sort of turns out to be like an antagonist, kind of.
Mm.
And there's a line where you have like a little dialogue choice, and you can say "I love you" to him, like "I love you too," and then, but then you'll get a second dialogue option with only one choice that says "haha, joking."
Uh,
Like, okay, like you just had a chance to kind of explore something there, but no, let's not.
so they queer bait you and then they hit you in the back of the head with a big shovel, saying, "We're gonna bury the gays now. Here,
Yeah,
enjoy."
the first game also had like these two female characters that seem like they might be a couple or not. The second game lets you confront them about that. It's like, hey, you guys seem like lovers, and uh, at first I was afraid they were gonna retcon some of it,
Hmm?
and unfortunately, the best we got was to still leave it ambiguous because you can outright say, like, "You guys seem like lovers." One of them acts very like, "Oh, ha 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 ha, how ridiculous, us lovers." Like, shy, but obviously, yeah, you care about her. And I was like, "Well, so, like, lover should be too strong of a word, but she means more to me than a friend, so she's precious to me." I'll leave it at that. It's like, that's a good answer, but it's like I wouldn't really call that representation. That's like positive,
There's
like same.
also the fact that in Japan, which is not an excuse, it's an explanation. The path to getting into a relationship is very specific, and there's very specific things you have to do, right? In terms of gifts and days, and in Persona game shows, like there's the white chocolate day, and there's all that. So there's that, but they can also queer bait a lot by having players do that, right, and go through the motions and go like, ah, but by the way, I didn't mean it that way. So, but I will say that as far as I know, our man Kiryu very much LGBTQ pro, you know. In fact, I remember that one scene, which I put when he's basically taking pictures and all that, and the guy in the speedo, and the thing he gets mad about, it's not that he got photographed, sort of really rated for a male calendar kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And what could be, very good quote is like he got done so without consent. It's like, no, no, no,
Hmm.
we don't do this without you asking permission. Like, oh, but we're gonna put you like, no, no, no. Oh, I don't want. Oh, well, I'm gonna have to beat the crap out of you because you people do not understand the concept of consent. And I think that
Yeah.
was pretty cool. It's like it was a very surprising twist. That's where that I don't know if the original, because of the remake, the original scene had that, but
Hmm.
it was a very surprising. Like, oh, okay, Kiryu's embarrassed because he doesn't think he's a good model or anything like that. It doesn't come up as being like he's embarrassed being because he's queered up or
There's
anything, right?
Yeah, there's also the other one where the other side quest where he's like a voice actor for
Uh huh.
a yaoi like audio like a visual novel. He just gets pulled off the streets like, hey, we need a voice actor. It's like you sound good enough. Let's here's the lines and stuff. So and it's like, well, what kind of video game is this? Like, oh, it's a visual novel. The girls love it.
Yeah, so yeah, he goes for it. There's another problems the story has, but still, that at least in that area, and there's queer characters that appear. There's a side story where there's this character who's clearly trans. Um, representation might say not the best, but not all trans people, appear, for example, extremely feminine or like that. And at the end of the day, it's like, you know what, this is the person this person is. You gotta respect that. It's about loyalty and friendship, and they moved on, so they don't want to be part of the gang anymore, right? So I think that was pretty cool as well, right? Could have been smoother, I suppose. It was too much on the nose in some areas, but you know, it's there. So for people who want to do that, I really hope that this doesn't get squashed, right? Um, so now we're gonna, well, there's the only way we can ease into this by saying more news on Twitch. Donald Trump's official Twitch channel suspended for hateful conduct by Andy Shock over PC Gamer yesterday. They just said the channel was suspended for violating his policy against hateful conduct. Apparently, the president himself, Donald J. Trump, was not ever on Twitch himself, I think, but it was his official. Basically, you're taking space in all these platforms if you ever need to be there, right? You don't
Yeah.
want to try to get permission to be on Twitch at the last minute. And there's been bannings on Reddit and stuff like that. And the reason why I say this as an intro to what we're going to be talking about, it's because sexual misconduct is not on the rise. Let's make that very clear. It's more visible now with multiple accusations. We have Assassin's Creed Valhalla creator director going on leave of absence amid infidelity scandal. This is Stephen Totolio and Kotaku. Another example. Kotaku talks about wave of sexual abuse stories causing reckoning in the Twitch streaming world. This is. I'm gonna put that because as again now content warning. I forgot I was gonna say content warning. This is going to be talking about something very heavy. This is content warning. I'm gonna put the link. Read at your own pace. If you find it distasteful, disgusting, or triggering in some way, and I do mean in the clinical sense, by all means, bail out as soon as possible. Multiple people accuse Skullgirls developer of making inappropriate sexual comments. This is by Ian Walker and Kotaku. And the one that really sort of rang the bell here in multiple ways, and one which is not necessarily directed to the misconduct, but it sort of shows other things that happen. Multiple women accuse games writer Chris Avalon of sexual misconduct. What do you think, Ash? And the reason why this particular story hits me is that I've heard from several sources, including the Podquisition, that essentially he was already known for this. I mean, the rumors were there, and you read a lot of these stories, rumors of different people being known to commit or being, doing these things seem to be all over the place. But let's just again content warning for sexual assault and abuse. On the weekend, multiple women in video game industry accused Chris Avellone, a writer on a number of renowned role-playing games, including Planescape Torment, Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance, and Fallout New Vegas, of using his stature in the video game industry to prey on women. The women accused Avellone, who most recently worked on the upcoming zombie blockbuster Dying Light 2, of groping, sexual harassment, and incidents in which took place at game industry networking events. Thus far, Avellone only response has been to a series of individual Twitter replies in which he apologized to some of the women, but did not go into detail about the events in question. Avellone has not responded to photography requests for comment. Later on, one of the things that happened, and this is important particularly with Chris Avellone, because Chris Avellone essentially got kicked out of, and he was one of the founding members of Obsidian. And last year, I believe, we talked about, around this time, the fact that he basically got kicked out of Obsidian. And Obsidian didn't say much about why it happened. He was complaining that his poor mother was left without health insurance. However, part of this, and it's sort of a bit of a sidetrack in the whole concept, is that part of his behavior was that he would use the company credit card at these events, particularly, the after parties and bars and clubs and hotel bars, to basically, say, hey, I'm with Obsidian, I have this money, I can spend all I want, who wants drinks, who wants to be with me, etc., etc. And there's also mentionings of different people who, different companies who have ended their relationship. Now, and this is pretty personal. I'm not going to detail anything because I'm a cisgender man. I have done things in my past, hopefully I can say distant past, that I'm not proud of, right? That's the area of personal responsibility. I am personally responsible for the things I did or failed to do. I want to get into the details. Suffice to say that if I could have a time machine right now, and I could hop on the time machine, go back 10, 15 years, about 15 years, and see myself, I would punch myself in the mouth. Like, dude, don't do that. That's wrong. So there's always the personal responsibility, and a lot of these stories focus on the individuals. But there's more to it. There's the corporate environment in which people know about these things, the industry environment, but everybody keeps quiet, right? Because their jobs are in danger, or they don't have all the information and don't want to know. It's one of the things where this is so ugly and unseemly. People have the reaction is, I don't want to know. The less I know, the better. And there's the final sort of social implication of this, because talking about my personal behavior, there is something that this gets very difficult, because it seems like I'm excusing myself. This is a way of explanation, not an excuse. There's pressure on cisgendered men, and also overlaps with homophobia as well, and the attitudes and the like, that we as men are, to be blunt, we're supposed to be the predators.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to be the go-getters, right? Women are there to be had, right? When I talk about James Bonding, for example, on video games, how that is kind of a reflection of that getting a romance is seen not as an evolution or exploration of a story element, but rather as there's a cute boy, girl, significant other, go get them, because it's a form of reward for playing the game. And so that's an aspect in the video games, within our video games, that reflects that, especially in the mechanical sense, like giving them gifts or talking to them or wearing them down, right? And that pressure was something that when I was younger, I felt it, but I was very uncomfortable and shy. Then I got older and sort of stopped fighting it and sort of embraced it. That was supposed to be a man. A man was supposed to be aggressive at a certain level, assertive. But I conflated self-confidence with imposition. I didn't cross many of the lines that are here expressed, but then this is a matter of a continuum, right? If these things were not happening, and if this was a spread, right, and I didn't do these things, but certain people did these things at the very edge, the very worst, you take that away, then you get to the next level, right? And okay, I didn't do those things, but they're closer to and adjacent to what I actually did. and other people have done by mistake or intentionally, under the influence of alcohol or sober, doesn't really matter. And then you keep that, and then you get into the realm what I think a lot of men have done at some point, where they get grabby and touchy and insinuating, maybe on the individual level, and you go like, okay, that's bad. So if you were to eliminate everything else, what's left is still bad. Still creates a hostile work environments, study environments, damages relationships. I lost friendships over that, and justifiably so, right? Why should you expose yourself to that kind of behavior if the person you think is your friend and is confident is treating you this way? You shouldn't. No one should have to put up with this, right? Like I said, probably I also kicked myself a couple of times for a good measure just to make sure I didn't do that. But I can't, so I have to live with the consequences. So what we're seeing here is a social problem. Why social problem? With an individual aspect to this, and Jim Sterling added something in his video on Monday, which also makes it particularly pernicious to the video game industry. We also talked about this before, and that's the secrecy, the MDAs. Everything that's an MDA in the video game industry. You go to the wrong bathroom, because that you went to the executive bathroom instead of going to the bathroom downstairs, whatever, MDA, right? You are, you're walking out and you say something, someone, MDA, right? There is, we've seen this on with The Last of Us. There's a thing where the media is treated as an extension of the industry, but also they're afraid of revealing these stories, right? And the particulars of this also, and it's a bit of short and frouder for me at least. I thought that since at least KOTOR 2, Chris Avalon was a hack, to be honest. I always thought that he was too lauded for things that he actually didn't earn. And so it doesn't surprise me that some of this arrogance, professional arrogance perhaps, spilled over to his personal life. I mean, sorry for stopping with dropping a heavy mea culpa there, but it would be incredibly hypocritical of me to talk about this. Like, oh, these people. I would never.
I don't know. And again, even I, as like while I'm gay, I'm still a cis male, and I have experienced the exact same stuff you have. And I think that a lot of that too comes from uh, machismo, which is very heavy in Latin America.
Mhm.
It's that perspective that we're supposed to be like we're male, therefore we're supposed to be the more sexually aggressive of the two sexes, and that you're expected to be that role. I was always expected to have a girlfriend and be more assertive and be more out there when I felt uncomfortable doing that. And I can only hope that I've never made anyone ever uncomfortable. I don't think I've ever given into any of that, but I certainly hope I've never made anyone uncomfortable in my youth with any of my behavior at all.
Mhm.
That being said, it's like I don't and I think this is like a mostly a men thing because I don't think I've heard very much of like a sexual any kind of sexual abuse or harassment as the woman being the perpetrator in the gaming industry. That seems to be a pattern. Not to say that it's not there.
I will give you an insight from another industry. When I was younger, I was very much into clubbing and going to clubs, and I got into that business, tangentially, right? And I can count a lot of times where, say, I was in a club, for example, and had myself being touched in ways that I found incredibly incredible, and it's dark, and you turn around and, like whatever, right? And then meet other situations where there were approaches. And I'm not a supermodel. I was born ugly. I'll die uglier. It doesn't matter. And it's not. This is never really about looks per se. Maybe in the individual level, somebody has a predilection and they'll go for that. But really, it's about control and power and what you can get away with. So I have been in situations where I wish I wasn't, but they were uncomfortable. But even then, it's still, I would say there's a ratio of male to female situations where either probably some of the people that were doing the uncomfortable touch were other men, right? either for dominance or attraction, whatever reason they were doing it, right? Or I did not translate those experiences into an understanding of how other people felt. In other words, I felt bad because butt touching, and other things have happened, that were uncomfortable or close to it. Um, and now looking back, I think that technically that would be considered sexual assault because it is physical. It's actually battery as well. Assault and battery if it's touching and attempt to and touching. It didn't go beyond that in most places. Mostly conversations that were uncomfortable, stuff like that, maybe. But there's again that machismo, but also that sense of in American culture, because a lot of situations happened when I was in the States, that you're supposed to project this sort of confidence and that you're the person who's supposed to get the girl, right? That there's a value to be seen acquiring female companionship, being around women, etc., etc. And there really isn't. And also in the video game industry, you have the sort of the added aspect of being nerds, right? The people that are the sort of the bottom of the barrel and never really get the girl, but now they're in a position to get the girl because they have the money and the resources, right?
All I can think of right now is I think we can summarize that behavior with Jacob Taylor's romance. Every risk, but the pride.
Yeah.
That's the attitude.
And talking about
Uh,
that, one of the revelations I had on the recent years when we talk about James Bonding, and I made a video about it many years ago, was when that situation got reversed. Because when I was looking at basically Mass Effect 2 with Jacob Taylor and some other characters, and I saw how that was done through a female character, that's when I started feeling uncomfortable about it. When I was playing as a male character, it was like, oh, this is perfectly natural, right? This is the way it's supposed to go. I played as a female shepherd who was doing the same thing, and I went like, oh, wait a minute, this makes me feel uncomfortable. What could that be? And I could just say very simply, well, the women shouldn't do this. Women should not do this. But then I played a male character.
women have no
Yeah.
women have no place in being protagonists.
So yeah, kind of thing, right? Women shouldn't do this. I would miscategorize it as being, but then I went back to the male characters, like, but the male shepherd is doing the same thing. So it's like, oh, in one way, it's coded to be the acceptable thing to do, right? The James Bonding, which is, all women want him, all men want to be with him, kind of situation, right? And particularly, again, we talk about media, visual media. It's also reflected in the games, right? Both reflected and also attempts to cover it, right? A lot of signal virtuing, on games, having, gay characters or trans characters or trying to write your way, be more empathetic, don't don't reflect the realities behind the scenes, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it also but also another thing is we have to add this to a very long list of abuse in the industry. The crunch, the people getting hired and fired at a drop of bottom button. That's not the right phrase, but I guess what you guys get what I want to say, and stuff like that, right? So it means that particularly women in the industry, and particularly probably queer women in the industry, even more so, are even more vulnerable to this stuff. I mean, we've been hearing stuff about this, like it, and this is also very interesting how it developed, right? It started out there in the conventions. Everybody heard about the conventions and how parties and stuff like that. And then it's been getting closer and closer and closer to the office, and now in many ways even the personal lives of these individuals. So it permeates, right? The again, we talked about the sort of sophomoric, at some level the video game industry has not gotten out of the garage or the bedroom or the dorm, right? And these attitudes are carried over as well, right? As always, the question is, how do we tackle with this, at all levels?
I think we have to just keep having that uncomfortable conversation. It's gonna take a culture change, much like how I mean, to sort of a lesser extent, how society has kind of put that pressure on drunk driving and
Mhm.
bugs driving. It's going to take this cultural shift to basically have everyone push back on that behavior, whether they're the victim or whether they're just an observer.
Mhm.
They People need to step in and say, "No, that's not okay. You shouldn't be doing that," and just keep reinforcing that that behavior is not to be tolerated, and it's not right. Um, and of course, we're gonna come to we're you're gonna get a we're all gonna get a lot of pushback because that's the way it's always been. It's that stupid mentality. Oh, I'm just a man. It's the way it's always been. This how men act. Herp derp. Don't you dare call it toxic masculinity. It's that behavior we have to push back on, and it's a lot of trying to educate these people as well who are perpetrators as to why it's not okay. Oh, why are these characteristics that have been instilled in you are wrong? And unfortunately, a lot of it is trying to undo a lot of programming that's been instilled into them as child, which is going to be hard for a lot of people. And of course, it it comes back to that argument that when when we're discussing race and stuff, it's I can't be a racist. The behavior I just did, you're saying that is racist, but so therefore you're saying that I'm racist, but I can't be racist because racists are bad. Therefore, I can't be a racist because I'm a good person.
Mhm.
It's just trying to put distance between their, I guess, the actions that they're taking and their morality. It's maybe you have to break that in. It's like, "Oh, no, I can't be, a sexual harasser because people who sexually harass other people are bad people, but I'm a good person, therefore I can't sexually harass people."
Yeah, what
It's
I'm doing, it's purely consensual, and I didn't mean it, and there's a lot of excuses, right? It's like, oh, she was into it, or they were into it, whoever the target may be, right? They didn't complain. Of course not. They didn't complain. Their livelihoods, their friendships, they are at stake. How are they going to complain, right? Um, right. Nobody wants to be the bad employee, right? Nobody wants to be in that position or the bad friend or whatever. Here's my solution. On a personal level, you got to wake up. You got to take responsibility for what you've done. You're not responsible for everybody else, but you're primarily responsible for yourself. At a group level, the if social pressure encourages, enables, and protects this, then social pressure, as you have said, is one of the ways to say, hey, listen, this is wrong. We're not going to allow it, and there's a consequences for doing it. Right? I think if somebody had gone to me like, dude, that's what the example of going back in time. I was like, hey, listen, I'm gonna have to sit you down. I know you're not a horrible person, but this is wrong, and this is the reason why. No guarantee that I would have done an immediate waking up, but at the very least, next time I went to do it, I didn't have any cover. I couldn't have had cover for that because I couldn't say, "Oh, well, everybody's doing it. Well, all my friends are doing it." It's like, no, you got told off. You have that information, right? Um, and then on the cultural level, we have to reassess masculinity, right? The toxicity of masculinity affects everybody who identifies as male at all levels, right? Not simply cisgendered heterosexual men like me. It just affects everybody because it becomes a rope that we tie around each other's necks, and every time we pull, somebody else pulls on us, and every time we pull on that, we pull on other people. It ties it together in ways that doesn't help anybody. I just hope it, just like what happened with BLM and all that, it doesn't get buried, right? That's why we have to have the
yeah,
conversation. It's gonna make people angry that people keep
it's
talking about it. Well, unless things change, you know.
yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's like a lot of the arguments are saying like, "Oh, I shouldn't have to apologize for white and white privilege and blah 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 and all lives matter." It's like it's not about that. It's like don't try to turn this conversation about you. This is a whole systemic problem that is wrong in our society. And if we keep that mentality of like, oh, well, that's the way it always was, and it's like, I don't see anything wrong with the system because it's worked for me, and that's the way it's always been. It's like that's not how we grow and we adapt to the changes as in the world. It's not how we continue to be inclusive.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately, again, it's a lot of pushing back on it and having uncomfortable like discussions, and not so much situations, but maybe you will have to be confrontational on people who say even so much as say something like that, and say like, whoa, that's not okay for you to say.
Or
Like,
do.
you shouldn't be saying that or shouldn't be thinking like that, because and this is why it's harmful.
And if they're your friends and your family members, just pull them aside. It's like, listen, I don't want to embarrass you publicly, at least once. But come on, man. I know you can do better. And yeah, it's gonna be again. It's gonna be an uncomfortable situation. Okay. Let's talk about it a little bit before we finish. It's uncomfortable because the behavior. Everybody knows that the behavior at some level it's wrong. Like I said earlier, if you were to reverse the situation and you were the person who was being verbally or physically approached and assaulted in this way, you wouldn't like it. I mean, even okay, let me preview a point of how I'm talking about when I talk about people, in bars. Let's say I'm at the bar, right, and I'm ordering a drink, and all of a sudden, boom, somebody pinches my butt, and I turn around and go, what's going on? It could be a girlfriend, right? It's like, unless she's my girlfriend, right? And she could be an attractive woman. It's like, oh my god, this woman's a model. I don't know why maybe they missed the mark and pinched somebody else's butt or something. It turned out to be my butt for some reason. It's still wrong and it's still uncomfortable. And like, would you not do that again? Of course, people say, well, you wouldn't say to that attractive woman not to pinch your butt. You're supposed to accept it because that's part of the play, right? Rather like, no, it's wrong, and it
Yeah,
felt wrong.
it's
It doesn't
that
make it
behavior
right
is
because
unacceptable too from a woman.
yeah,
Just because women are seen, unfortunately, they're seen as lower in society. They're also like a not a minority, but like an like privileged group
yes,
as a whole.
yeah, underprivileged.
Unfortunately, that's 50% of our population. So it's like, oh, like their sexual power moves can't be that because they're like a disparaged, like, lesser group, therefore they can't have power. So that makes it okay for them to do those things because it doesn't really mean power, which is no. It's
And
just as wrong if they do it.
not only that, if you are the victim and as a male, then you can't complain
Yeah.
because you're supposed
The
to
co
accept it. It's supposed to be like, well, of
Yeah,
course you attracted this attention. You're a man. You're supposed to grab it,
it's
right? It's like, yeah,
yeah, that's also where it comes down to the whole, like, issue with the patriarchy and, like, the toxic masculinity against, like, "Oh, you were raped by a woman? Well, aren't you lucky?"
it's not really rape because men don't get raped because men will
Yeah.
always want to have sex, which feeds into
What
the
you were
yeah, like
what, you were tied down and shoved Viagra down your throat and then repeatedly ridden by women, by a sexy woman? Well, aren't you lucky?
or
Even
drugged.
like, what
Um,
is wrong with you? Why wouldn't you want that?
yeah, and I do know of at least one person that something like that happened to them. It was a long time ago, and I don't want to talk about this person because they don't deserve to be
It's
dragged into this. But I do know at least one case, right? So it does happen.
I
It may
mean,
be the minority, but it's still wrong. And that should clue you in is that if it's wrong one way, it's wrong the other because the actual behavior is wrong, and that's why you're uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable because you might be found out and put in a position where you get called out and be the bad person. Well, if you can't avoid being the bad person, good for you. If you can't avoid it, fix it, deal with it, right? And going back ultimately to Mr. Avalon here, he has extended some apologies. I want to say something about apologies because there have been cases we talked about. I think off stream we talked about someone else. Well, I think is ultimately a good person but made a mistake. If the person does make good effort beyond the apology is just like the first, acknowledge, apologize, work on it. If they do make a good effort to make better, you can, and I would encourage people to give them the benefit of the doubt but you're not obligated to do so. Especially if you were the person who were the victim, who was in the receiving end of this. Like, no, this was too much. This person crossed the line, violated my confidence and my trust in them. How can I trust them again? Because it's ultimately it's very personal. It's not only physical, but it's also emotional in the sense of violation of trust, right? You trust people to be around them, to be safe in a party, to be go with them, work with them, and then they do this, and it's like, who do I trust? So I think that's my final word on this. If you're someone who's done something like this, you acknowledge, you apologize, you work on doing better. I encourage people to give people who are proven to be working on this, not merely apologize or acknowledging, but actually doing something about it, the benefit of a doubt, but understand that you are not owed that benefit of the doubt, especially from the people that you have directly impacted one way or the other. You're not owed it. Like, it's right now, I meet one of the people, ex-friend of mine, for example, and that she would say, I don't want to talk to you. That's it. That's the end of the conversation. I don't go like, oh, but that's it. That's it. There's a reason why that friendship ended, and that's that. End the story. So that's my final take. I know that I was the one who did one of the monologue in this section, but I have things I wanted to get off my chest to the audience. Chad, thank you for coming. We will continue with more Dragon Age Inquisition. Don't worry about that side of Dragon Age Inquisition, because I romanced Cassie. Cassie's perfect, and so I love her. That's it. And we'll have more on Sundays, of course. I will be back with a Raktus channel playing Iron Claw and anthropomorphical tabletop RPG over Raktus. And if you want to support the channel, of course, subbing, following, dropping bits, and buying my new book, Nights and Starts, or 99 cents on Amazon. The link is below on the main page. And Chapelmon, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Chapelmon pretty much anywhere. I am Chapelmon_Aragon on Twitch and Twitter, but I primarily hang out on YouTube under Chapelmon.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming. The bots will be here and also on YouTube with a content warning. We'll see you when we see you. Bye bye, everybody.